All right, Dr. Natalie. Now we're talking about vegetable trials. All right. So what are the basic components of the AAS program? And before you start with that question, let's define AAS.
Okay,
what does
so
that
that's
stand for?
so that's the All-America selection.
Yes.
Lots of times when you're shopping the garden center, you may see that little shield, that little emblem. So what we're really saying is that is a cultivar that's been trialed all over the country. And so we have independent judges who we actually send in an application. Give us your credentials. Are you good enough to be a judge?
How about that?
Yeah. And so all across the country in a range of environments, we're trialing cultivars that haven't yet been released to the public.
Okay.
And we're comparing them against two common industry standards and saying, are they better? And no cultivar testing is bulletproof. We can't say say, this is going to do great for you. But in a variety of sites all across the country, if it can perform pretty well, it's a good indicator.
Okay, I would think that's a great indicator. All right, so where do these trials take place and who are the judges? Who are the ones that are judging this?
Yeah. So right now there are about 70 All-America Selections locations. Okay. And there are 4 different types of trials that go on. There's the edibles, of course, my personal favorite.
All right.
There are ornamentals that are seed propagated, ornamentals that are vegetatively propagated, so they're coming in from cuttings.
Okay.
And then perennials, which is actually a newer All-America selection. And so not all judges do all of those 4. Okay. I just have responsibilities, for edibles. But these take place, a lot of them are on university research stations or at botanical gardens. There are some who take place on industry trial areas, Ball and all those sorts of sites, and they're judged by horticulturalists, who have a background in growing and production and who are familiar with the common practices for the crops.
Okay, might not be a bad thing to be a judge who gets to eat a little bit of that. The edibles.
It's part of the evaluation.
It's not too bad there. So what are the elements of comparison?
Yeah, so you were just talking about tasting, and that is definitely one of them. So what we're really judging are a range of criteria that are important for homeowners. Okay. And when seed companies put their seeds in for the trial, they'll say, I think this is better than its competition because it's more disease resistant or it has a better taste. And so those things that they nominate that they feel are better are some of the most important things that we judge. So taste is one of them, and I can tell you that I'm better at some areas than I am with others. Right? So, tomatoes, I'm good with tomatoes. I'm loving to eat the cantaloupe. The muskmelon trials, those are my favorite. The sweet peppers, I'm all good with that. And I want you to know that I've been sacrificing for the science on these hot peppers. I take them home and I'm like tasting them, and I'm sitting on my porch, just tears running down my face.
They look hot,
Yeah. So we got some paprika and some Serrano peppers over here, and I taste test them. You gotta collect the data.
Wow.
So and in the field we're evaluating as far as uniformity of produce, how well did it stand up against insects and diseases and wind and rain, so a lot of different factors.
All right, so you want to be a judge, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. So everything but the hot peppers.
Yeah, but the hot peppers. All right, so how are the winners determined?
All right. So throughout our whole season, we'll make ratings on a range of criteria and turn in our overall score, and then there's a third party who does all the combinations, and there can be regional winners and national winners. So of course there are going to be some crops that may do better in the humid southeast or better in the drier northwest, and so you can get regional winners, but if it does well across the whole nation, then that'll be a national winner. So then those winners, are released, and AAS doesn't do publicity, but lots of garden centers, extension services, we can then share that information with the folks that we work with who are, always interested in what's new and what's good, right?
Oh, and I always want to try it, if it's new. I always want to do that.
The novelty factor.
Always. All right, so what are some thoughts and lessons from your first year of doing some of these trials?
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting for me because I come from a little bit more of a commercial vegetable production background. So the way that I've been managing these has been based on how a homeowner would do it. So the fungicides, if I need to spray, I only use something that they could get a hold of. And we're not growing on plastic mulch.
Smart.
We're using an organic mulch. So some of the management methods. The other things that have been interesting for me is that these are in the UT Gardens in Knoxville. Good. So it's in a public garden. And my most important lesson has been that things take longer when you're working in a public garden. You know this. I mean, you know this really well, right?
You know that.
So allow more time for picking, because that people will come up and you'll have great conversations. I've learned all kinds of stuff working in the garden, and so yeah, allow more time for conversation.
More time. Okay. Yeah. So you come from a commercial background, so tell us a little bit about the commercial trialings.
Yeah. So I mean, when we're trialing commercial cultivars, lots of times we may be focusing on yield really as our primary attribute. Certainly more now that the taste and those qualities. But you know, when we think about what works for a consumer, it's really all about how does it look in their garden? How does it perform throughout the year? Can I grow this successfully and not spray that much? When a commercial producer would be willing to spray at needed intervals, the homeowner may be less willing. So there are going to be some of those aspects of management that in some ways the stakes may be higher for a consumer cultivar than one that would be managed commercially. You know, we want taste and ornamental quality.
Of course you want taste.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, so how can this information benefit the home gardeners? Because at the end of the day, they want to know, all right, so I'm getting this, you know, vegetable. What does it mean to me?
Right. So it's all about making gardeners more successful. You know, we have some experienced folks who we work with who always want to do their own trial and error, right? But a lot of the newer home growers that we work with, whether they're younger, whether they're working, whether they don't have very much time, they don't want to spend effort on 15 cultivars when 1 or 2 are really going to be their prime performers. So we just want to increase people's chance of success and keep them engaged in gardening, because if we can help them grow great produce and have fairly disease-resistant plants, then we can keep them engaged, and that's what we want, for them to be long-term gardeners instead of trying something one year, being kind of disappointed and not doing it again the next year. Success. It's all about enhancing success.
All about success, even for our folks that don't have plants at home, right? So they just try a vegetable, right?
Even for Booker's lawn. We can put a few peppers on the edges.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, we've got some ornamental cayennes we can work in there. Yeah.
See, Booker, that might work for you.
Yeah.
Or you can just take these home with you.
I enjoy that, the growing vegetable like that. I do have a tomato plant.
A tomato plant.
Single tomato plant.
In a container.
Now, what are some of the trial crops that will be coming up in the 2015 vegetable trials?
So in our trials right now, we have several determinate tomatoes, a couple indeterminate tomatoes. Booker mentioned his containers. We actually have a few pepper plants that are ornamental but also edible that could work well for container gardeners. So we really have a lot of smaller, more compact plants that could work in raised beds or in containers. So you know, that's another key difference between commercial and consumer. We want these plants to be, you know, available for diverse growing environments.
All right then, Natalie, we definitely appreciate that information.
Yeah.
All right, and we might even get Booker to get a couple of tomato and pepper plants at home.
Try that then. Give me a vegetable garden. Get my daughter started doing that too. She needs to know how to grow vegetables.
Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. To find out more information on this topic, just click on the familyplotgarden.com link in the description.